My uncle accidentally sent me a video of my family calling me a pathetic daughter, while I'd been paying for their utilities for years. She should be grateful. They laughed. I stayed silent until the next payment was due. I, 29F, never expected my life to change because of a misdirected text message, but that's exactly what happened 3 weeks ago. For the past 4 years, I've been quietly paying my family's utility bills. It started when Dad lost his job during the pandemic, and Mom's part-time work at the grocery store wasn't enough to cover everything. My younger brother was still in college, and my older sister had just had her second baby. I was the only one with a stable income as a software developer, so I stepped up without being asked. Every month, I'd transfer money to cover their electricity, gas, water, and internet bills. We never talked about it much. I'd just send the money, and they'd send a quick thank you text. It became routine, like breathing. I thought I was being a good daughter, helping my family through tough times. The video arrived on a Tuesday evening while I was working late. Uncle Mike had sent it to our family group chat by mistake. He meant to send it to his wife, but accidentally hit our family thread instead. The thumbnail showed my parents' living room, and I could hear voices laughing in the background. I almost didn't watch it. Uncle Mike was always recording random family moments, and I figured it was just another boring clip of everyone hanging out. But something made me tap play. The camera was shaky, clearly handheld, and Uncle Mike was trying to be sneaky about recording. I could hear my parents, my sister, and my brother talking in the background. Then I heard my name. My sister's voice came through clearly, saying she couldn't believe how pathetic I was, always trying to buy their love with money. My brother laughed and added that I was probably desperate for attention since I didn't have a boyfriend or any real friends. Mom chimed in, saying I should be grateful they even let me help them, like it was some kind of privilege. But it was Dad's voice that hit the hardest. He said I was a disappointment as a daughter, that I'd never amount to anything beyond being their personal ATM. They all laughed when he said that maybe if I wasn't so boring and antisocial, I might actually have a life worth living instead of obsessing over theirs. The video was only 2 minutes long, but it felt like hours. I watched it 3 times, making sure I heard everything correctly. Each viewing made my chest tighter and my hands shake more. Uncle Mike realized his mistake about an hour later and sent a flurry of apologetic messages, begging me not to watch the video and saying it was taken out of context. But the damage was done. I'd heard exactly what my family thought of me when they believed I wasn't listening. I didn't respond to Uncle Mike's messages. I didn't call my parents or text my siblings. I just sat in my apartment, staring at my phone, feeling like the biggest fool in the world. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. My colleagues asked if I was okay because I looked tired, but I just blamed it on a late-night coding session. I threw myself into my projects, staying late every day that week to avoid going home and thinking about the video. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard their laughter. Every time I looked at my bank account, I saw the automatic transfers I'd set up for their bills. Every time my phone buzzed with a family message, I felt sick. The monthly payment was due the following Monday. I'd already set up the automatic transfer, like I had for the past 4 years. But this time, I canceled it. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I just quietly removed the automatic payment and waited. Tuesday came and went. Wednesday too. By Thursday, I got my first text from Mom asking if I'd forgotten to send the money for the bills. I read it and put my phone away without responding. Friday brought more messages. Dad texted asking if everything was okay with my bank account. My sister sent a message saying the electricity company had called about an overdue payment. My brother asked if I was having financial problems and needed help. I ignored them all. By the following Monday, the messages became more urgent. Mom called twice, but I let it go to voicemail. Dad sent a long text explaining that they were getting final notices on several bills and needed the money immediately. That's when I finally responded. I sent a simple message to the family group chat, saying I wouldn't be able to help with the bills anymore due to budget constraints. I suggested they might want to look into financial assistance programs or consider getting additional income. The response was immediate and explosive. My phone started buzzing constantly with calls and messages. Mom was crying in her voicemails, saying she didn't understand what had happened. Dad was angry, demanding to know why I was abandoning the family. My sister accused me of being selfish and cruel, especially knowing she had 2 young children to think about. But it was my brother's message that made me laugh out loud. He actually had the nerve to say I was being ungrateful for everything the family had done for me over the years. I screenshot that message and sent it back to him with a simple question mark. The calls and messages continued for 3 days. I ignored most of them, but I did listen to the voicemails. The tone shifted from confusion to anger to desperation pretty quickly. By Wednesday, Dad was leaving messages saying they might lose their utilities if I didn't help immediately. Thursday brought a surprise visitor. I came home from work to find my sister waiting in the hallway outside my apartment. She looked exhausted and stressed, with dark circles under her eyes. She asked why I was doing this to them, and I told her I wasn't doing anything to anyone. I was simply no longer paying their bills. She said that was the same thing, and I asked her to explain how my decision to stop giving them money was somehow an attack on them. She couldn't answer that question. Instead, she started crying and talking about how her kids needed stability, how Mom and Dad were too old to start over financially, how the family was falling apart. She begged me to reconsider, promising that things would be different if I just helped them one more time. I asked her if she remembered the conversation they'd all had about me being a pathetic daughter who should be grateful they let me help them. Her face went white, and she started stammering about how that wasn't what they meant, how it was taken out of context. I told her I'd heard the context perfectly clearly, and that context was them laughing about what a disappointment I was while spending my money. She left without saying another word. Update 1. The weekend brought Uncle Mike to my door. He looked uncomfortable and kept apologizing for sending the video, saying he never meant for me to see it. He explained that everyone was just venting their frustrations and didn't really mean what they said. I asked him what they were frustrated about exactly. He stumbled over his words, trying to explain that sometimes people say things they don't mean when they're stressed about money. I pointed out that their stress about money was something I'd been helping with for 4 years, and asked what exactly they had to be frustrated about regarding my assistance. He couldn't give me a straight answer. Then he tried a different approach. He said family was family, and that I should forgive them because they needed me. He reminded me that I was the successful one, the one with the good job and the stable income, and that meant I had responsibilities to the family. I asked him if he thought those responsibilities included being called pathetic and disappointing behind my back. He said I was being too sensitive and that I should focus on the bigger picture. That's when I realized Uncle Mike had been part of the conversation in the video. He'd been there, listening to them tear me apart, and he'd said nothing to defend me. Now he was at my door, not to apologize for staying silent while they mocked me, but to convince me to keep paying their bills. I told him to leave. Monday brought the first real consequences. Mom called, crying, to tell me their electricity had been shut off. She said the kids were scared and didn't understand why the lights wouldn't work. She begged me to reconsider, just for the children's sake. I felt bad about the kids, but I reminded myself that they weren't my children or my responsibility. Their parents needed to figure out how to provide for them, just like every other parent in the world. Tuesday, Dad called to tell me they were losing their internet service. He said this would affect my brother's ability to do his college coursework and could impact his grades. He made it sound like I was sabotaging my brother's education. I reminded Dad that my brother was 22 years old and perfectly capable of getting a part-time job to help with family expenses, especially since he apparently thought I was pathetic for doing exactly that. Wednesday brought news that their water service was being suspended. Mom left a voicemail saying they couldn't cook, clean, or bathe properly. She said the neighbors were starting to ask questions, and she was embarrassed. I almost broke at that point. The thought of my parents living without basic utilities made me feel guilty and cruel. But then I remembered the video, and I remembered that they'd been perfectly comfortable mocking me while I paid for those same utilities. Update 2. By Friday, something interesting happened. My brother called, but instead of begging or demanding, he actually apologized. He said he'd been thinking about what I'd said, and he realized how awful they'd all been. He admitted that he'd gotten comfortable with me paying for everything and had never really appreciated what I was doing. He said he'd gotten a job at a local restaurant and was going to start helping with the bills. He asked if I might consider helping again if he could prove the family was changing. I told him I appreciated the apology, but that I needed to see consistent change over time, not just panic-driven promises. He said he understood and that he was going to talk to our parents about getting jobs too. That weekend, I got a call from my sister. She'd also gotten a job, working evenings at a call center while her husband watched the kids. She said she was sorry for what she'd said in the video and for how she'd treated me when she came to my apartment. She explained that she'd been stressed about money for so long that she'd started resenting anyone who seemed to have it easier, including me. She said she'd never stopped to think about how much I was sacrificing to help them, or how it might feel to hear them talking about me that way. I asked her why she thought I had it easier. She said she'd always assumed my job was easy and that I made money without any real effort. I explained that I'd worked 60-hour weeks for years to build my career, that I'd sacrificed social relationships and personal time to advance professionally, and that I'd been living in a small apartment and driving an old car specifically so I could afford to help the family. She was quiet for a long time after that. Then she said she'd never realized how much I'd given up for them. Mom and Dad were the last to come around. It took them almost 3 weeks of living without utilities before they finally called to apologize. Dad admitted that he'd been embarrassed about losing his job and had taken that embarrassment out on me. He said it was easier to criticize me than to face his own failures as a provider. Mom said she'd been so focused on their immediate needs that she'd never considered how her words might hurt me. She said she'd always been proud of me, but had never thought to say so because she assumed I knew. They both asked if I could forgive them and if there was any way to rebuild our relationship. I told them I needed time to think about it. Update 3. It's been 2 months since I stopped paying their bills, and things have slowly started to change. My brother kept his job at the restaurant and picked up a second job doing food delivery on weekends. My sister is still working at the call center and has started doing freelance bookkeeping from home. Dad found part-time work at a hardware store, and Mom increased her hours at the grocery store. They're not making as much money as I was giving them, but they're covering their basic expenses and slowly catching up on the bills that went unpaid. More importantly, the dynamic between us has shifted. When we talk now, they ask about my life, my work, my interests. They don't just contact me when they need something. My brother actually invited me to dinner last week just to spend time together. My sister has started including me in family activities again, but this time as a sister, not as a financial resource. She asks for my advice on things that have nothing to do with money, and she actually listens to my answers. Mom and Dad have been working to rebuild trust. Dad sends me articles about things he thinks I'd find interesting, and Mom calls just to check in on how I'm doing. They're making an effort to know me as a person, not just as their successful daughter who pays bills. I've started helping them again, but in a completely different way. Instead of just sending money every month, I help them budget and plan. I taught my brother how to build credit and helped my sister set up a savings account. I'm contributing to their financial stability, but I'm also teaching them how to maintain it themselves. The video is still on my phone. I haven't deleted it, and I probably never will. It serves as a reminder of how easy it is to take people for granted and how important it is to appreciate the people who care about you. But more than that, it reminds me that I'm worth more than what I can provide for other people. I'm worth being loved and respected for who I am, not just for what I can give. My family learned that lesson the hard way, but they did learn it. And honestly, our relationships are stronger now than they've been in years. It turns out that when people have to work for something, they value it more. That applies to money, but it also applies to relationships. I'm glad Uncle Mike sent that video by mistake. It was painful to watch, but it forced all of us to confront some uncomfortable truths. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best changes, and sometimes you have to stop giving people what they want before they can appreciate what they have. The utilities are back on at my parents' house, but more importantly, so is the respect. And that's worth more than any bill I ever paid.